Hi, and welcome to the Unreal Engine News and Community Spotlight. CG Architect's annual Architectural 3D Awards saw an exciting debut this year, the inclusion of 2 categories specifically for Unreal Studio projects. The first category, the Unreal Studio Experience Image, focused on visual quality of a single image created in a real-time setting. The winning entry from Enter Architects is this absolutely stunning photoreal picture of a poolside retreat with reflections, multiple light sources, and foliage. The second category, Unreal Studio Experience Film, required not only stunning imagery, but also a demonstration of an innovative interactive experience. The winning entry from Line Creative is a video presentation of a package they offer to clients, a game platform where clients can review all the visualization media assets for their projects. The sample experience is available as a free download on the Line Creative website. We extend our congratulations to the winners and to all the nominees in the Unreal Studio categories. Be sure to check out all the amazing Unreal Studio projects from the contest. The latest of science fiction writer Philip K. Dick's stories to inspire a visual adaptation is The Great Sea, a post-apocalyptic tale of a journey through a perilous land to question an all-knowing supercomputer. The Great Sea is now a richly detailed 37-minute virtual reality experience powered by Unreal Engine, courtesy of Secret Location, a Canada-based content studio specializing in emerging platforms. Dive into our interview with the team to understand their design decisions and development process. If you'd like to check out the experience for yourself, The Great Sea is available at select VR arcades and entertainment centers, and will be coming to Oculus Rift, HTC Vive, and PlayStation VR. Every year, we feature some incredible student projects in our Unreal Engine Student Sizzle Reel, and we'd love for you to help us find them. If you'd like a chance to have your project featured in an upcoming Student Sizzle Reel, upload a video to YouTube or Vimeo and send an email to student.reel@unrealengine.com with your name, the name of your school, the project's name, and a link to the video. We can't wait to see what you've created. Unreal Engine 421 will soon be here, but in the meantime, the first preview is now available for download from the Epic Games launcher. Preview 1 includes Nintendo Switch support for Niagara, improvements to cooking times, and IPv6 support, in addition to general quality of life improvements in rendering, networking, animation, and more. A full list of the upcoming changes to this build are available on the forums. We appreciate any and all feedback on all of our previews, and please keep in mind that these releases are intended only to provide a sample of what is going to be released in the update and are not production ready. So on to our weekly Karma earners. These fine folks are diving into AnswerHub and supporting their fellow devs, so thank you very, very much to Mighty Enigma, Every Nun, Shadow River, Centurias, Zdrone, Dudersem, Thompson N13, T. Sumisaki, Cold Steel 48, and a North Star. Keep up the great work. We love seeing you all up here. Our first community spotlight is called Sun Corridor by Stamsik. He's built this lovely interior scene, composing some great interior shots, and has done a fine job executing the lighting in this scene. Our second spotlight is Mystery House VR. It was made by a solo dev, and in Mystery House, you are utilizing items in the room to solve puzzles and ultimately escape the house. So great work. It's always cool seeing these solo devs taking on projects and learning all kinds of things. So wonderful, wonderful work. And our third and final spotlight for this week is Super Solar. It's a top-down isometric action game with dungeon crawling and space shooter elements. It's set in a sci-fi space setting with a customizable ship, so you can load it out with all kinds of weapons and gear. It's looking absolutely fantastic so far. The team is in early development, are looking for any feedback, so if you want to jump into their thread and share your thoughts, I'm sure they'd appreciate it. Nice work, folks. Thank you for joining us for our news and community spotlight. Hey all, welcome to the Unreal Engine livestream. I'm your host, Amanda Bott, and with me I have Adam Skutt, Senior Character Artist, and Tim Slager, Fellow Community Manager.
Hey everybody.
So, thank you all for joining us, and thanks for joining us, Adam.
No problem.
You want to give the folks a bit of an overview of what you'll cover today?
Sure. So I thought today that we would go over a little bit of the
new shading and rendering techniques that were done for our digital human content, a bit of material updates that we did, and then I think it's important to show off some of the modeling techniques that we did in order to, like, make it all happen. So yeah, just kind of an overview of the whole process.
Cool. And yeah, a lot of this content you may have seen previously at SIGGRAPH. It's the Meet Mike segment, so it's Mike Seymour. And are you showing any of Siren today, or is it all about Mike?
No Siren. It's
All right.
it's the same.
The same
So,
techniques,
and
right?
This is like what we give the community. I'd rather just stick with this, and then, yeah.
All right, sounds great. You want to dive right in?
Sure. All right, so on my screen here, we have Mike. And the first thing I want to talk about, and I think what, a lot of people are probably most interested in, is what we've changed with the skin and how we went about getting such, such improvements in the skin from our last digital human release. So let's jump into his head material here. And first things first, we'll just go into the Subsurface Profile. So in here, and actually I will undock so we can actually see what's happening on the screen. In here we have a few new attributes, one of them being the boundary bleed color, the transmission, and then the dual specular. So I'll start at the bottom with the dual specular and work my way up. A lot of times, in pre-rendered stuff, when you are working in V-Ray, at least from my experience, you want 2 specular lobes for the skin. The skin is a pretty complex material. So for instance, you have oily bits and drier bits, and there are subpixel, like, micro frequencies within, like, the pores themselves and just the structure of the skin. So you actually get these 2 specular lobes. You usually get a tighter one and a broader one. So we've added that. And if I kind of mess around down here with the roughness of each, should be able to see the broad one right now changing, and then the tighter one right here changing. And then on the lobe mix, you can basically, it's basically the ratio or the balance between the two, right? And just to kind of illustrate that further, we have our, where's our folder here? Human, digital human, let's do spec.
Oh, you brought up some images.
Yeah, I got some images here. So this is just the singular lobe, or the first lobe, the broad spec, that's kind of goes around like all the skin, right? And then next, this would be the tighter specular lobe, which is, it is attributed a lot to oil. There's a T shape kind of on the face, which is like the forehead and the nose, usually on the chin a little bit. That is oilier in general, so that's what this is going for here. And then here's the mix of the two. So if I go through them again, you can see original, second,
right,
and then the lobe mix. So this actually gets us a lot more realism within our skin, because if you just have the one lobe, it tends to look very plasticky.
Yeah.
So that was a big step forward, in my opinion. Let me close this down here.
Well, it feels like it gives it some of that. You still have the shine without it just feeling like you're a complete, like, oily creature, right?
Right.
And so it's a good balance of the two.
And a lot of times people before would do with just the first lobe, it's so, like, uniform that, like, you aren't getting, like, the good highlights. Like, in a lot of our reference images, we had, like, Mike would have, like, a really strong highlight on his nose or on his chin. And without that second lobe, those weren't there. So we weren't able to match our reference images.
Gotcha.
So that had to be put in. Next is the transmission. So the transmission is commonly known as just like backscatter. So if there's a light behind your head, you're going to get that redness to your ears. Or if if you hold your hand up to a light, you get you can see your bones, and then the redness comes through, right? So you can see it a little bit here. And then the little attributes in here. So the extinction scale is basically the fall off, right? So this is just how quickly that effect is falling off. So you can see it's a little bit subtle right now, but when it's down to 0, it's kind of coming all the way through the head as if there was no bone or anything in there whatsoever. And then if you kind of find the sweet spot here, it just kind of sits on the ear, which is where it could be. And ideally, we'd be able to put in a mask, which we can. I've been told. We just haven't implemented that quite yet. Then we have the normal scale. So the normal scale is basically just like an inward offset, right, to where the calculations are happening. So because it's basically like mimicking skin thickness in a way, all right? So again, if we change that, you can kind of see it goes from surface to like maybe a little deeper within the mesh within the mesh itself. Then there is the scattering distribution, and basically, so right now we have like a light source behind us that is giving it this this forward scatter. The scattering distribution is basically just it's like an angular distribution of how light goes through something from a specific direction, right? So if we had the scattering distribution all the way up, you can see that that redness is pretty tight. So we're getting a very like if the light's back here, we're getting a very focused, like kind of like direction of light.
Yeah, it's more laser.
Right. And if we bring it down, it disperses. It doesn't lose any energy because you can see like the face actually gets brighter because it's dispersed everywhere, but it's no longer as focused. So again, you're going to want to balance these things out to get the effect that you want. And then lastly is just the index of refraction. And for skin, it's set at 1.47, I believe. And that's basically just how, when light enters a material, how that bends, right? So, if a light like enters like a piece of glass or something like that, it's not just going to go straight through one side and out the other. It's going to go in, it's going to bend a little bit, and then come back out the other side. So,
I mean, that's why you see the distortion in water and things.
Yeah, almost spilt my water there. That would have been embarrassing.
That would have been distortion.
Yeah.
You're just trying to make it like the hurricane outside.
And one other thing we have here that is pretty significant is we've added this color bleed. So before, when we had like two subsurface materials over top of each other, they would basically give like this halo effect. And I have an image of that from our GEC presentation. Let me see if I can find, why don't I ever remember where this is? Don't worry, guys. I'll find it. Okay. So.
I don't think that's it.
No, that is not it.
Too many windows.
Was this it? Is this it?
Adam Skutt,
Where?
right? The one on the left?
You are right. Okay. Oh man, no, this one's the not.
If you, minimize that.
Let me just grab it from here.
Yeah,
Control
there you go.
humans. And then let's open up color bleed. Oh. Oh my God. This kind of stuff happen all the time, or is it just me?
Are you just getting
all the time.
jitters?
No.
Stream jitters?
It's fine.
Actually, isn't it either?
Well, while it's opening,
Oh.
This is going well.
what was the size of the team that was working on Mike?
It was basically, so in-house, it grew. It started off pretty small. It's just a couple people, maybe 4 people actually, and then as like the project expanded and we started doing like getting the set going and figuring out what the project was actually going to be, it grew, and then we had like external partners as well. I don't have an exact number, but just in-house it probably grew to about 15 or 20.
Okay.
Yeah. So and then externally there was a bunch more guys. So this is what I was trying to. This is what I was attempting to pull up here. So if you look at the teeth around the mouth, right here, basically, you can see this like little white halo around everything, and that's just the subsurface, like the screen space, like SSS is kind of like giving this halo effect, right? And it doesn't know what color, like when you have the two subsurface materials over top of each other, it doesn't know what color to blend. So Pete Seminasani, our senior tech artist, added in this color bleed attribute, and it doesn't get rid of the halo, but it specifies what color you want that to be. So if you, for instance, for this one we made it darker, and you can see it just goes away, it just blends in. So it becomes like almost like actually like a shadow, right? And that works for things like eyes as well, because they're a subsurface material now, and you don't want like that weird color halo around like the eyelid and where the eye meets, so you can specify that as well.
Honestly, I would never have noticed that if you didn't point it out.
Really? It's when she's animating, it was pretty noticeable, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then but when you look at the two, Like, I mean, it's
Now when you
it's a
do that, I can
significant
definitely
difference.
see. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just feel like she has like somebody shining like a glow stick
Yeah.
in her mouth or something.
All right, I'm going to keep this window over here. Oh, I just closed it. Are you kidding me? Hold on, this window. All right. That way that doesn't happen again. Okay. Just pop that down. So those are the, the improvements we made to the skin from a rendering side. If we go over to the material itself, I can kind of explain exactly what's going on here. So Mike was a scan from ICT. So they delivered the displacement, the diffuse, specular maps, and a few other things as well. So the diffuse map here is pretty much, it's from them. There was some color correction that we had to do, and then there was some the artistic side was basically, painting out the skull cap they use when you get scanned, cleaning up any scan errors, like anything with undercuts needs to be painted out, and then finishing off. I think if I open a map here, pop this guy open. So yeah, if I open the map here, all this hair had to be painted back in, all this neck stuff down here, all these eyelids, they weren't there, and the nose. So just anything that like wasn't captured needs to be put back in.
Right.
So that's like the extent of the actual like texture painting that we did for the albedo map here. We want to keep it as true to the scan as possible. Right, like we don't want to go in and start really messing around with it and doing artistic tweaks, because the goal here is basically to have like as close to a digital double as possible. So we're not going to be like, oh, hey, let's go make his cheeks a little rosy because that makes him look, younger or whatever. Like, so we try to keep it very
True to form,
what the scan was. Yeah.
Somebody said that texture makes him look like he's sleeping peacefully.
He might have been. He might have been sleeping when he got the scan. That's the head color. And then so you see all these extra ones in here. These three here are for, they're just like animated maps. So for blood flow, basically, if you squint your face up or do things, you're going to have like capillaries contract and expand, and the colors in your face will change. So that's what these are. And of course, these were all scanned out as well. He was scanned in different expressions. From there, we have taken out a little bit. There's a little bit of occlusion data that's in that scan, and so with an occlusion map that we baked, we were just able to go in and divide that out, just take that out and brighten up certain parts a little bit, and then that's the base color. So the base color was fairly straightforward, other than the color correction side that was done on like tech art side, but for an artist, it was just painting out areas that needed fixing. If we jump over to, let's jump over to specular. So specular, in UE4, the default specular value would be 0.35. In here, we have it at 0.4, and that's simply because, when we're comparing with our reference, we needed to match that. So perhaps Mike has, maybe like maybe a little more oil or something. I don't know, but like to get to that spot, we had to up it to about 0.4, but it's still pretty close to the 0.3 value. So I feel that 3.5 value is just like kind of like a starting point, right? So
that's very close overall.
Yes. So and here he's at 0.4, and that's just like a constant across all of his skin. So back in the day, people used to go and paint like spec maps for like lips and noses and foreheads and all that kind of stuff. We just wanted a constant, and then what we did was we would take a cavity map, which is right here, which you can get it a few ways. You can bake it out of a ZBrush if you have enough resolution on your model. You could get from the specular capture and run it through some filters to just get like just to get like the cavities. You could take a normal and convert it to a cavity map. You could bake it in null. There's lots of ways to get a cavity map, right? So that's what we have here. Is
there generally any preferred methods of grabbing that over one?
It depends. Lately I've preferred baking in null. Just because it gives me like kind of like a nice, like if you think of a pore, so in ZBrush it's going to give you a super sharp basically like pores. I think this is probably a ZBrush map. It's gonna be super sharp. If you bake in nulled, it actually gives you a bit of a fall off from that pore, which is nice. So it's not just like on off. It's like strong and then like a little bit of a gradient like coming out. But again, really what it's going to come down to is jumping into the engine, trying out different things and seeing like which one works best for you.
Yeah.
Right.
That project. Yeah.
And remember, this project was done like over a year ago now, so there might be like this was a ZBrush cavity, but we may have done it differently if it was now.
Would you call it? We're calling it nulled.
Nulled, KNALD. It's like a baking software.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, is there a reason that the resolution on this is 908 by 908?
Where do you see that? 4096?
No, where your mouse cursor over the map is showing 908 by 908.
Is there an
that's
LOD
just what it's
thing?
Okay.
displaying.
That's just what it's that's not a specific like.
No,
resolution
all of Mike's textures should be about 4K.
Okay.
I think after Mike we went up to 8K for Siren because we felt like we weren't getting quite as much,
Gotcha.
sharpness from him.
But that's not like a standard.
No, I don't know what that 908's all about. I don't know what it's displaying.
Probably just what it's displaying here on the screen. Got it.
Yeah. So cavity map's important because that's going to like basically modulate your specular, right? That's where you're going to get like, because the engine can't shadow pores. There's not enough resolution in the shadow maps to actually shadow pores. So by just taking the specular out of those pores, it kind of mimics that. And then also, you could potentially take that cavity map again, and then lerp in, something close to a skin color to actually add a bit of diffuse color into those pores as well. If you didn't have like a scanned, if you didn't have the luxury of having a scanned skin color, and you were painting it by hand, you still want some like color variation within the pores themselves. So you could use the cavity map as well for that, right? And lerp in like you could like actually sample probably the scene color, and then it would have like color variation within those pores. But yeah, so there's stuff like that. What else here? Specular. So we did add a few region masks within the specular just to, just again to match our reference images.
Would you zoom in a little so they can see it?
Yeah.
Because they end up being a little small.
Yeah, sure. So region masks, I mean, for right now it looks like we're only using the red one, right? So it's just the nose. And actually, I think if I open, where'd Mike go? Mike. Oh no.
The viewport?
Mike.
Or
Where'd Mike go?
No.
are you looking for his?
The viewport. Where did it go?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
right
right
there.
here. Cool, down here. So if we just look at his specular maps, and hopefully this comes across, you can see that his nose is a little bit darker, actually.
Yeah.
Which normally you'd think it'd be the other way around, right? Like the nose is a little shinier, right? It's a little oilier. But again, comparing to reference, we had to we were getting too much shine on his nose, so we had to bring it down a bit. So we just used that region mask and kind of throttled it down a little bit, and that's what we got. But here again, you can see like all the the specular cavity and everything.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so it turned out pretty good. And you can see like if you like zoom way out that it's a pretty uniform like one color thing. It's not like the old school specular maps where it's like the lips are white and whatever.
What's with the gold kind of crown?
Oh, he was just
selecting.
selecting.
Okay. But so ultimately at the
But it
top
looks
there
nice.
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
man, that's cool. Is that like
Yeah.
a bounding box for him or something?
No,
or?
it's just the selection.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's kind of how the specular map is created. And then if we go back to the head material itself, you can see that there is, there's a Fresnel on there. I believe that was taking. So what that's doing is it's masking the glancing angles, because if you turn your head, like pores are indented, right?
Right.
But if you're having light shine on those pores, and you turn to the head, you don't want a specular cavity, right? Because that makes it looks flat with like just blank specular areas, right?
Yeah.
So what you need to do is on the Fresnel and the glancing angles, if I'm looking straight at you, you shouldn't have like cavities in your specular, right? Because you can't see into the hole.
Right.
Right. So like on all our glancing angles on the Fresnel, we've taken that out. It's like kind of like it's a pretty subtle thing, but it does help. And then we've just gone into there, and that's our specular channel. Our roughness is kind of interesting. We tried a bunch of different stuff with roughness, and in the end, what we ended up doing was taking our micro detail map So the micro detail map is something that was created at ICT. They take like little regions of the skin, like little like swatches,
Oh.
like up close,
Mhm.
and then they run it through some computer algorithm, and it basically figures out and blends together all these different skin patches, like micro skin patches, to
Yeah.
give you like a different. Basically, what it's doing is it's giving you a roughness,
Uh-huh.
right? Because roughness is just like it's just a micro-faceted surface, right? And it can say like, okay, your forehead, you know, the skin's doing this. On your like nasolabial fold, it's maybe like a little bit different.
Mhm.
So we kind of get like an estimation of that breakup.
Yeah.
So for that, we've taken our normal, and it's a normal map. It's given to us as a displacement, but we converted it to a normal map.
Okay.
This one actually is 8K.
Okay.
It was delivered at 16K, but we didn't end up using that. And actually, where am I looking here? That's not what I wanted. Some more head. We want this. So this is the micro detailing map,
Yeah.
and then we've just plugged our normal into the green channel of the composite texture, and then basically we just adjust the composite power until it matches our references again. In fact, I should probably bring up our OLAT references here. So here is, it always gets me. So digital mic is on my right side, yeah. And then the one with the smaller pupil is on my left. So with this, we can really like start to, this is how we're tuning
Oh, I see.
like how close we are, right?
I was reading chat.
Yeah.
That's a mixture of photoreal and
Yeah, so the one side, so the side where his pupil is bigger is engine.
oh
The
wow.
the side where his pupil is smaller is the photo reference.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, so we actually built the light stage. Like we got like all the coordinates for the lights, right? Built a blueprint that would, you know, fire at the same time
Right.
as the lights on the stage. And then that way we could have like exact frames that were like, okay, this is where the light is on the stage, this is where the light is in the engine. We could have the same light source, same light intensity, and then we could compare the two, right? And the only reason I can, half the time, like when I'm sitting back like this, the only way I can tell which one is the real one and which one is the fake one.
You said left is engine.
Left is engine. I know, wait,
This is great.
no. That side is engine.
So the
The
smaller pupil is
Smaller
pupil
pupil
is
is engine.
So right side is engine.
I might even have to get up and look
so
at that.
so here's
Because the light is bright, right? So
Yeah.
the pupil should be smaller. So it throws me. Unless I'm sitting like close to my screen,
Well,
it's difficult
like if I
to
look
tell.
at the hair
Yeah.
on the right, to me looks more aliased.
So I'm
Yes.
looking-
So this is engine. This side's engine.
okay. So looking
yeah.
at the forehead, the
Yeah.
ridges going left to right, horizontal ridges
Yeah.
is real.
Yeah.
Is real mic.
Yeah.
Digital mic is up and down. Or non-existent.
Yeah. And there is
This is fun.
There is some discrepancy in actually the forehead wrinkles that we looked at, because he did have a bit of a furrow going on, and it's not like super apparent here. So yes, we definitely do see the horizontal ones on one side, but a lot of our scan data, they're going a little bit more vertical. So it's not exactly,
Right.
but it's
But during
pretty
your
close.
process, do you then look at those pictures from that shoot or from the scan and kind of one-to-one compare it to how the scan data is?
Yes, definitely. Like just like this, like Pete lined it up here, and that way we could see exactly, you know, how it looks. And also, because he it's hard to tell, but he is squinting a bit, right? He has like these he has these bright lights in his
Right.
face. And there was
Yeah, you
a
can tell his
conversation.
cheekbone is higher.
Yeah, he's got a bit of cheek razor going on, and there was a conversation like whether or not do we try to resculpt parts of those areas to make
Right.
them totally neutral, or do we just stick with this since this is more of like a research project, and we decided, hey, let's stick with this. Let's not
Right.
try to like reconstruct him into like a very neutral pose. So yeah, there is a bit of furrow there, you know, but
Yeah, you can also see like the I don't know what else to call it, but the fold in his
nasolabial fold, like right
yeah,
here. Yeah,
right here where it's a bit wider on the engine side as opposed to the real side. But again, that could just be the angle. It could be the lighting.
that's
it
just
could be-
lighting. Yeah, that should be
Oh.
pretty. That should be pretty close. And then here's another side.
Is
So
that
na-
the inverse?
No.
No, it's the same side. This side is the engine
Oh,
side.
okay.
Yeah, and it's a little more obvious there because of the hair.
Yep.
But it's just when the hair's in shadow, it's harder
Yeah,
to tell.
but you can see that one a little bit. even
Yeah.
on
And the
the
eye
left one.
creeps me
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Like the difference in sizes of the
Yeah,
pupils.
yeah. And then also with these references, because we talked about the backscattering over the ear, because there's only one light at a time and it's going around his head, we can get really good information about, like, you know, from that light, how far do we match that transmission, right? So if you see the ears turning red there, so
Right.
can we match that in engine? So we're able to tune it from a bunch of different light directions, which is pretty cool,
Okay.
right? And
Yeah,
like
yeah.
this is just a sampling of the photos. We have them going like, it's like 350 of them like going all around.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. On that. And then I think I had one more, the face. Not as interesting, actually. Still interesting in a way. Let me bring this up real quick and move it over. Close him there. Digital human. I want viewport 1. I'm going to turn this off. Lit. Let's zoom in on him a bit. And actually, let me grab this light right here, our area light. And let me bring down, it's hard for me to see the screen, light width and light length. Let me bring it nice and low. Come on, Mike. So this way we'll get harsher shadows. Oh. And let's focus on this
That's
shadow right
insane.
here, right? And then if we look at the material. Bring up the subsurface profile again. One more thing that I wanted to mention is the fall off color. So the fall off color is basically going to be, and it's super helpful to have reference images like this. So if I go through them a little bit, okay. Oh, I zoom in on this bad boy. Aha. So if you look at the fall, so you see a shadow, and then you get this nice band of color. It's like a reddish kind of color, right?
Yeah.
With those types of images and us being able to match them,
Yeah.
digital human, you can see here that under our fall off color, we are able to, that's what it's affecting right there,
goodness.
that little band, right? So that's not a new thing,
Yeah.
but I just feel like a lot of people didn't really realize what, you know, the fall off color and the subsurface color is. The subsurface color is basically like the overall skin. And then the fall off color is that like little banding right there. So you can see that we can get some nice banding, as well as with the scatter radius, you're going to get more, right?
Oh,
So,
yeah.
and again, like with those awesome references we have, we're able to totally fine tune that scatter radius, right?
I just want to point out how utterly detailed that is. Like, just looking at it on the stream and on the screen, just even seeing like the hair follicles right above his lip. It's just
Oh, the little peach
right,
fuzz.
and like the blemishes that you see, it's just it's insane.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on.
Like, this is incredible work, man.
Thanks. And like I said, it's a big team of people. I was a small part of that team, but we're proud of the way it turned out, right? Because I feel our digital humans took a pretty big jump from where they previously
Right.
were, right?
Yeah.
And it's still that uncanny valley, right? That we're trying to figure out a way.
Yeah. And the Andy Serkis thing was, I don't know if you guys saw that, but that
Yeah.
turned out
Oh, yeah.
awesome. The animation on that was crazy good. We took everything we learned from this project in Siren and applied it to that. And actually, this project, once Andy Serkis was done, we took like the improvements and brought it back to this and put this
Oh,
out.
cool.
So
That's awesome.
yeah, so this is pretty up to date here.
So,
Brief candle.
referring to the
Yeah.
colors there, they're wondering if do we keep the subsurface color and fall off color similar, or like how do they relate to each other to make?
So the fall off color is usually going to be a reddish tone, a warm tone.
Mm-hmm.
The subsurface color, like the first color,
Yeah.
is going to be closer to a desaturated skin color.
Okay.
And I think that's pretty much true for, like, again, you'd want to compare it to reference, but I think that's pretty much true across ethnicities,
Okay.
right, in different skin tones.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to our material here. So we touched on the roughness and how it's just our base roughness is just coming from our high quality micro normal map, and then we add the meso normal map on top. So basically, you have two normal maps, right? You have your meso map, which is pores and a bit larger features like moles and stuff like that, and then your micro map is literally supposed to be like the micro skin structure. It's kind of like microscopic in a way, but it does break up the light a lot. So when we add those two together, and then also add all the animated meso maps here, you do get roughness changes when they're animating, right? Because they're being driven from like scans that were done when Mike was making poses. So the base micronormals don't change, but the meso normals, they change as he's animating. So you get roughness changes. And then again, there's more variation within the roughness that basically fuzzies it up on the edge just to help mimic peach fuzz. And then scatter, we have a thin and thick scatter. It's basically just letting it scatter a little more in the ears and the lips and I think around the eyelids, which is just right here. And then our normal maps, again, we have like the micro normal map right here. And then we have it masked out. So if I zoom in on the mask here, you can kind of see it. We've masked it out on the lips because it's just not the same kind of skin. You don't want like all that miniature breakup. On the tip of the nose, we looked at a lot of reference, and we noticed that the skin on the tip of your nose is fairly like taut compared to other parts of your face. And whether or not this is 100% true, if it is, it's gonna stretch. It's gonna be stretched out, and then the micro normals it shouldn't be quite as strong there. And we noticed that when we have micro normals on the nose, that it gave us too much breakup. So we just kind of masked it out, and it gave us a lot closer of a 1-to-1 from our reference to what Mike actually had. Like there's like a little highlight like right here that we just couldn't get without getting rid of the micro normals.
Right. And I feel like that's pretty typical on like noses and stuff. Like there's just the pores are a little bit bigger, but there's not all the like little noise that you get like in the cheeks. And
right. And then again, we masked it out like on the inner eyelids, and that was about it. And then we kept it everywhere else. But we felt that was, a pretty necessary thing to match our reference. Let's move this. Let's move that. Let's move this. And then from there, our micronormals are again connected to our mesonormals, and then again those are animated. And then we have some normal strength attributes here, so you can kind of like balance them a little bit. Micronormals at 1. So the micronormal thing is funny because when they're captured, there is a bit of arbitrary scale to them, and so you have to kind of go in and adjust their scale.
Okay.
It's not like you just scan it and you're like, this is this, because it's done differently. You're not just going to like get your micronormals and apply them, because generally they're going to be way too strong, and they're going to break up the light way too much. So I think we ended up around like 0.1 or 0.2 intensity of them. We felt like that was a good balance, and then we just added them to the actual mesonormals there, and then those are our normals, right?
Okay.
So again, those were baked out of. I believe, Nald again. Yeah, I think it was Nald.
Okay.
The baker it's not really a big deal where we baked them, but I think that's where we baked them. And then lastly, our ambient occlusion. We baked a different occlusion maps. The one we found pretty helpful, though, was hair. Just because, like, if you have, like, 2 bald heads and you bake an ambient occlusion map, you're not going to get any occlusion up here. But Mike has hair, right? So what I would do is I made the hair, brought that into Maya, and then baked it in Maya down to the scalp.
Okay.
Right? So if we go to that chant, let's go to this guy again. And I think it's just the red. Whoop. Yeah. So you can see his hair is baked down. And then that way you're not getting as much like specular leaks and things like that, right? Because the hair's shadowing, but it's not going to get it quite as much as that.
Right.
Right? And I think that's it for the face. We added a little bit of, this is just a tiling map, a little bit of extra micro detail for the roughness. Yeah, that was pretty much it for the face. It was really a lot of sitting there looking at the reference, talking about the reference, and trying to figure out like what is actually happening, and then balancing attributes, and then Pete like actually taking those, you know, doing the bits of shader code, stuff like that for it when we figured out what we were looking for, and then just more balancing and balancing, right? So that's the face.
How many man hours went into
1 million. No, I don't know. I have no idea.
1 million man? Confirmed.
Yeah. We worked on it for, oh man, it's probably like four months before we jumped onto Siren.
Gotcha.
So this was like the pre,
Right.
this was like pre-Siren, right? And then from what we learned from that, then we worked on Siren, and then they took all of that.
Is your workflow faster now that you?
I've been on, yes, for some things. I was on Hair for a lot of these projects. It has sped up, but it's still a time-consuming thing, right?
For sure.
It's a difficult thing to do. Okay, so that is the head material. No, we do not want to save that. And then let's look at. He's all red and stuff now, so I was messing with things, but let's talk about the hair. So the hair is kind of interesting. So this time, when we first started this project, we had a debate whether or not we should use all splines or cards or a combination of both. And everyone in the room, I think, was pretty unanimous that we wanted to use splines for hair. Like, we wanted to have individual hair strands. Just we didn't know if we could afford it. But we're risk takers, why not? So so we're like, let's just do it and then see what happens. And we managed to get it in. There definitely had to be optimization in the amount of geometry. And so we did that. But I think the hair ended up at about 300,000 triangles or so, just for the hair and the head. And then there's the peach fuzz, which is like the hair is by far the densest geometry. So let's look at the material here. And I do want to say we did improve some of the way, like the way the light scatters through the hair a little bit, just a little more realistic.
Yeah.
But that's all I know about that. It's programmer stuff, so we have to ping them on that one.
voodoo.
Yeah, but it does look better than what it used to. So the hair itself it was an interesting problem to solve, right? It's one thing we groomed all the hair out, and actually I'll bring up Mike here. Maya Mike, and wireframe. I know how much everyone loves wireframes. So it was a fairly interesting problem to solve because, you know, how do we get all of this hair in there, make it look good, make it perform, you know, like there was just a lot of like little issues to solve. So my approach to it was build the hair in XGen as you would build, you know, a pre-rendered kind of groom of hair, right? And then what we did is we converted that to geometry, and you can specify how many spans in each hair like happen when you do the conversion, right? So say I have a piece of hair this long, I can say I want 3 spans. So you get like, you know, 2 edges in there, then you end up with like the 3 spans. So we did that, but the problem is it doesn't specify, it doesn't do it based on length of hair, right? So if you have a piece of hair that's like 1 centimeter or a piece of hair that's 10 centimeters long, and you set 3 spans, they all have 3 spans, right?
Gotcha.
So we had to go in, once I had the groom, we had to go in and manually optimize it. So it was kind of it was a difficult process in the way that we didn't have a great tool at the time, and we had actually ended up having Aaron Carlisle write a tool for us that was quite helpful, but that was after this project. So what we ended up doing was breaking it up into chunks, bringing it into ZBrush, breaking that into polygroups, because ZBrush handles the higher density mesh a lot better, bringing that back out, and then optimizing chunk by chunk, because if you try to do it like this, it just would bog down Maya so bad that it was almost impossible. So now on this model, it's all combined for the most part now, but the short hairs have less spans, the top hairs have more spans. But it was definitely like a tedious process, and if anyone from XGen or Maya is watching, they should probably do something about that, and you know, add like optimization per like span length would be pretty awesome. So once we had this, we in Maya generally the hair will billboard towards the camera, right? But we want the engine to do that, so we turned billboarding off, converted the hair to geometry, brought it into engine, and then turned billboarding back on in engine. And basically
Okay.
what that means is each hair strand is always going to, face the camera. So there's always thickness. You're never going to go like beside it. And you're not just going to get like, a plane that's facing you. You won't see like the skinny side of it. So we did that. And then the hair, all in all, it looks like I have to turn on poly count here, display.
Looks like my next hairdo. Green in the back, white on the front.
I wish I had this much hair, man.
Oh God, so do I.
I can't see the number. It's like 315,000, I think. Yeah, right here.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so that's how much.
316.
316. So that's how much hair Mike Seymour has, and I think that's the lowest of all our digital humans, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he also had the sparsest hair out of all of them. Between like Siren and Andy Serkis, they both had, Andy has thick hair. And
So if anybody's
Siren.
ever been wondering how many pieces of hair Mike Seymour has, 316.
Yeah, he'd probably argue that fact. He'd probably say more, but I think part of it too was that, you don't have to get the exact amount of hairs right.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like he may have had like 10 million hair strands. You have to kind of balance how many hairs you can actually create and what looks good. And we still did the underpainting on the head to fill in the blanks,
Yeah.
right? Like it wasn't something that we were just like hair strands only, we're good. Like we still had to do the painting.
So there's still actually a head under the hair, right? There's skin, there's flesh.
There's skin and then
If you
there's
take the
like,
hair away,
painting.
he's just a bald guy at that point.
Well, with paint,
With
with
paint,
hair paint,
right.
yeah. And that also helps blend in, like, like the transitions from the skin, too,
Right.
right? That'll help blend that
Right.
in a little bit. Again, eyelashes, done the same way. Eyebrows, eyelashes. Peach fuzz, again, there's like probably another 100,000 triangles there. And then interesting enough, see if it's in this file, I hope it is. If I hide this, yes, we have these little guys.
Oh, wow.
So anywhere where the skin, noticeably where the skin touches the, or the hair touches the skin, like around the hairline, eyebrows, eyelashes, we duplicated the geometry, deleted everything but the first or second span, and then applied a different shader to that. And Pete wrote a shader that would like kind of like blur those. So instead of having like that doll hair look, you have like regular hair, and then it hits this, and then it blurs out. So you get a really nice soft
So it looks
transition. Yeah, and it doesn't just like, peg
Right.
hair in there. Yeah. So that was pretty good. That was a good like little discovery there. It worked pretty well.
And so you're doing the same thing we said with the hairline?
Yeah, with the hairline up here, it should be in here. So it might be harder to see. Yeah,
the
it
little
might not
pieces
actually
there.
be in this file, but it's in the
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the actual content we released.
Gotcha.
I looked at it today before I came here, but it's just not in this file. And then you can see here the topology of the face. It's fairly dense. It's like 40,000-ish triangles. And then the shirt, I'm a big proponent of using Marvelous Designer for things like modeling clothing, especially when you're trying to do photoreal stuff. The other option would have been to scan someone in a shirt, but we didn't have a scanner here, so Marvelous Designer was a good bet. Pretty realistic folds and pretty straightforward. Just do that and slap it in and put a fuzz shader on it. So anyway, this is Mike this is Mike's mesh. Let me hide this stuff real quick just to go over. So again, here's teeth and eyes in case anyone's interested. And
Now do you guys, for this kind of thing, do you replicate actual teeth? So if he was, say, missing a molar, or do you...
these teeth is a mold of his teeth.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so these are his teeth.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
Yeah. And actually, if I go back to here, so this was the first iteration of our digital humans thing. We did get, not that, where was that? Color bleed hair, or hair? No.
What are you looking for?
It's a picture of all the actual elements that would end up in our final thing here, but I might not. Oh, here it is. So yeah, so he doesn't have all of these, but our subsequent characters did.
Right.
So you can see the eyeball geometry, and then there's a caruncle blend, which is caruncle is just like your tear duct, and it just kind of blended that a little bit better onto the sclera, like the eyeball itself.
Okay.
And then you have the lacrimal fluid, which is, it's your tear line, but like literally there's a little gland in there that leaks, and it's called lacrimal fluid, and it like builds up. So it's a tear line. And then the green piece on the eye there was the occlusion in blur. So basically what we did with that was we'd add some like occlusion, some fake shadowing in there from the eyelid, and then we would add a blur. So where the eyelid and eyeball touched, it wouldn't be such a harsh transition, because you have two subsurface materials that are touching each other. It shouldn't be like a, you know, like a super clean like line, right? It has to be blurred out a little bit. So that's what that is. And it's very similar to what, I mean, it's like pretty much the Paragon setup. The differences is some of the materials are a little more sophisticated. Pete wrote a better blur attribute to kind of like work on the eyes and just little things like that. Oh, and I should say that the eyeball now is using a subsurface material, because I don't think it was before. And then the mouth, teeth, gums, tongue, pretty self-explanatory there. And then we added another little blue piece of geometry here, the blue one that goes around where they touch, and we used it the same way as the blur of the
green,
eyes.
yeah.
So it like blurs like where the teeth and gums touch. That's a very translucent area. And then you can see we added some little saliva bubbles. I don't think those ever came across in the end, but if we had a super close-up of the mouth with the right lights, they would show up and it'd be awesome. So
You just need to get him doing like a spit take. So
Yeah.
that you can,
yeah. So that's the setup. I just want to show that because you don't see the whole thing here,
Right.
because he's missing a couple of those pieces, but
Right.
that was the general setup. So let's hide Maya. And then, so what are we at here? We're at hair. So hair is an interesting thing. Like I said, we did it all pre-rendered, and we had to figure out a way, and so each hair is a strand, right? We had to figure out a way to color it, get color variation, basically get the breakup from all like the scales, because hair is actually what? Okay. Hair is actually, this is a microscopic, image of hair. It's all scales, right?
yeah.
And so you don't get like a perfectly like smooth highlight on it. You get like almost like this little glint or like speck going on. So we had to do that. And then what else did we have in there? And that's it. Okay, so I'll talk about each one of these real quick. The hair albedo is just running up the V. So when the UV axis running up the V, when you convert geometry from XGen, it will automatically overlap each hair. So that was super convenient. And then that way we could just have a linear like gradient, root being a little darker, tip being a little lighter, and that's what you see right here. And then down here on our second UV set, if I'll show you the UVs right here. So this is our first UV set. Everything's perfectly overlapping. This is our second UV set, and basically what this is all the hairs have been shrunk down and been basically flattened to the scalp, right? So with this, we could paint a map like this that says, hey, we know where the front of the hair is. We want some gray hair up there. And then we want like just a randomized speckled gray hair everywhere else. So we could pump in like color variation and like where the grays are and all the stuff through that UV set. So it's basically hand painted, which was nice. And then from there, we go down to, let's see here, the edge darken. So I believe this punches into the color as well. And this is basically just another gradient that is going to, like if you had a straight hair strand, this is going to darken the outsides of that strand, right? So if we look at, let's see, edge color, alert, power. Start previewing and jump on this here. Turn you around. So you can see on the outside, like if you picture this being a hair strand, this is the bottom, this is the top, it's darkening the edges a little bit, like color-wise. But it's also being pumped into things like, it's a bunch of stuff. It's specular. I think it's pushed into scatter. Just a bunch of things. And it's basically, because each hair is a flat card that's just billboarding.
Right.
So this is kind of faking, like giving it like a little bit of
The
a
roundness,
curvature,
yeah.
right? So there's that. And then the scraggle I talked about, what's called scraggle in here, but it's kind of faking all the little like breakup along the surface of the hair, like all those little scales. So that's what this is all adding right here, which is a nice effect. And then our third UV set, the baked occlusion is this, right? So every single hair, which is a lot of them. I mean, it doesn't look like that much there, but they're really packed in there. That might even just be like a segment, so I could show, right? Like that might just be like a small segment of them.
Yeah, yeah.
But they're all laid out, and they all have their own UV space. They're not collapsed on each other. That way, we could actually bake an AO map. It was a pretty low res AO map, even though the map itself was big. The amount of pixels each, hair strand took up was small. But we could at least get some like a little bit of AO information on each one.
Right.
So we did that for the third UV set. And then we plugged that into, I think it's plugged into ambient occlusion up there. And I don't think we used it for many other things. We may have used it. No, I think that was it. We just used it for ambient occlusion. And then lastly, down here we have our mid-width and root taper. So when we convert the geometry in Maya, like the XGen primitives to geometry, we make them as thin as, like, super thin, right? Like you usually don't even see them in Maya. The only reason you could see them when I pulled up the scene is because wireframe was on. Okay. They're very, very thin, because that's as thin as they can be in Engine, right? Once you get them in Engine, then we have this root tip taper, and that's where you can specify the thickness of the hair.
Okay.
And there's also a pixel, minimum pixel size, min world width, and min pixel width. So that way, if you're zooming out, you can say, hey, this is getting smaller than, like half a pixel or 1 pixel, and this will adjust it it'll scale it up a little bit to be a full pixel. And that way, like when you're zooming out, it doesn't start flickering too crazy.
Right.
It keeps a nice look to it when you're zooming in and out from the camera.
Yeah, that's smart, instead of having them all sort of
Yeah.
fizzle out.
Yeah. So that was the hair, I believe. I don't think there's anything else in the hair. Let me just look at my folder real quick. Hair UVs. Humans, hair, Maya, micropore, flat, color bleed. Got that. Can look at eyes. Okay. So eyes. So like I said before, we didn't have subsurface with eyes. And this is Siren, by the way. So it was added. And another thing that was added was the ability to have a normal map for the eye, for the iris itself.
Oh,
Before we didn't have that. If you look at like really close photography of eyes, you can see the depth. All the little like I'm not sure what they're called, but all the little fibers within the iris itself. There is depth within those, right? There's like layers.
Yep.
So before, this is now, and this is before. So here it's totally flat. I think you're probably only getting depth from like color information. So this might be a little heavy-handed on this one, but you can see that it's there,
Right.
which is nice. And not to mention like did I talk about the irradiance yet? Or sorry, yeah, the color bleed here is helping as well. It's just the blur and the color bleed is helping integrate this really well here. So it's a pretty nice combination of tools to like make the eye look really believable, right? It's just, but again, it's a balancing act. So
Gotcha.
let's pull out of that. And then let's go to hair, Maya, micropore. We don't need to look at that. That's gross.
Close up, of course.
Overlap, yeah, and spec. Showed the spec.
Yeah.
Oh, and then there's a couple other little things. So if we go back to Mike here, where'd he go?
For the head, I think.
Yeah. No.
Did you lose Mike?
Oh, I think it's behind, yeah. Move that out of the way. Another thing that was added was the screen space irradiance. So let's go to this, back to this. Material. So when light, so say we have a ray of light that's coming down and hitting his cheek, and it bounces off the cheek. Some of it gets absorbed and scatters around. Some of it, and then it bounces off and hits his nose, then bounces off and hits like his upper eyelid or like upper eye, and then it's bouncing around all over the place, right? So you're gonna get a little more illumination in there from all that happening. And right now with this off, you know, it's kind of dark in here. It's a little bit, you know, not really realistic. So we added this screen space irradiance, and it's kind of hard to see the difference when I just like kind of turn it on and off. But see it on my nose?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just giving a little bit more of that, like faking that
The
bounce
scatter.
light a little bit. So that actually has helped a lot. You know, getting kind of getting rid of that like grayish black that happens to be in like a lot of like CG. So yeah, so that's that. What else did we add? I think that was. How are we on time?
I mean, you've got some time if there's a couple more things you want to show off.
Sure. So let me think of what they should be.
Or we can do questions.
We could do questions while I think. That's cool too.
They're wondering if, let's see, has the team played around in the forward renderer with this? So they're suggesting that it seems like quite a few of these SSS profile params would be nice to map per pixel, but they feel that's a bandwidth issue for deferred and less so with forward rendering.
So this guy's all deferred. For him, so in all of these projects, I don't believe that we've played around in any forward rendering things. The only forward rendered stuff in here would be things like his tier line, where we're doing the, what is it? So it's the, I'd have to look at it again. It would be the tier line, but no, we're not in a forward renderer right now. Hair blur. Lacrimal fluid.
But is that something that's even feasible in these kinds of projects, you feel?
I do. I mean, I've worked on places that use forward rendering before, but yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest.
No,
yeah,
it's all right.
People are wondering if the digital human rendering is performant enough to run on mobile AR, in your opinion.
Mobile AR. Again, I'm not sure.
No.
I'm not sure about that. Yeah, I mean, Mike Seymour was built to run in VR, and
But it requires some power.
it requires some power, and then like the resolution with stuff like the hair, it can get pretty flickery.
Right.
So you have to up the screen percentage to get it to look
Got it.
decent, and then of course that takes more power,
Right.
and
Like,
it's just
You're just not going
comes
to
to
benefit
power.
from all those details, even
Right.
being
You
on a
won't.
small screen.
No, and
It's
that's
not
why
worth
at
it.
SIGGRAPH we had the people trying out like the different they're the people with the headsets, and then
Right.
we had him on like a screen so people could see what we'd actually created without just seeing it in VR as well, because there is a little bit of difference between the two, right?
Yeah. They're wondering about like hair interaction, and if could we put him in an environment and have his hair interact with like wind and things like that.
It just depends on rigging what they can do. So in the you could probably have something kind of like maybe how like grass moves,
Yeah.
like something in the material, but I
gentle.
don't know if you could actually get like a wind simulation really going on there, because it's pretty heavy.
Right.
For Mike, we did break up the front chunks of his hair off from the back, and the back is rigged, or the front is rigged to like his face, so it does move properly with his face, but it's not dynamic or anything like
Right.
that. But the back was static, so it had like no movement whatsoever, other than like when it moved with his head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Asking, why was a separate UV set needed for the AO of the hair? Could you just bake off a hair AO and plug that into an AO slot on the material?
I mean, so that's what we did. Well, so the first UV set, every hair was overlapping, so we couldn't bake an AO with that UV set because it wouldn't work, right?
Yep.
The second UV set, where they were all individual hairs, those were all collapsed onto each other. So again, like if you tried to bake an AO, it would just be over the entire hair, like it wouldn't work. So the trick was to have each hair have its own UV space and have enough of that space to be able to bake an AO, right? So we thought about baking it to like vertex color as well, but that didn't work out the way we wanted. So so our next solution was, hey, let's just make another UV set. It should give us enough resolution if we lay the hair out properly to get that AO. Yeah, and it is a subtle effect. Like
Okay.
it's not like a drastic effect, but yeah.
They're asking if you can see how the screen space iridescence was built, but that's actually is that an algorithm or is it a material?
It's a material. I can pull it up. It's available in this content.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Bring this back. M hair. B head.
It's buried,
It's
hidden
in here.
away.
It's in here.
But
Oh wait, this is what I need here. Sorry.
there we go.
So again, this it wasn't. Oh god.
We're all spoiled by our 2 monitor setups.
Yeah. So everybody has this that has downloaded this content, and they're free to pull it apart. There's some custom stuff going on in here that I think Pete wrote that. But it's sampling like albedo, screen color, depth, and things like that, normal, and then it's just saturating the color a little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
But people are totally. I mean, it's available for people to look at and dissect. Yeah. Yeah.
And let's see. They're wondering if you can explain sort of how the min pixel percent works.
Sure. Min pixel hair.
I'm digging through all these files.
There's a lot to explore.
There is a lot. There's a lot. So let's bring this guy. So min pixel root tip. Let's put this line here. Go.
There he is.
All right. So it's been a while since I've looked at this really closely, but we have our min root, right, and our min tip, right. So you have like you can specify the root and tip thickness, right, and it might look good from one spot in the screen. Like if I'm this close, this min root and min tip look great.
Mm-hmm.
Once you move out, those are not going to change, and then so what would happen is like. For instance, let's do min pixel width here. And let's say I want my min pixel width to be, let's just do something high, 1. So you can see how his hair gets thicker there. Let's do it higher, 2. So the minimal pixel width right now is 2 units, okay? 2 pixels. So if I zoom out, you can't actually tell, but that hair is increasing in thickness, right? It's holding that minimum of 2 pixel width. If I do min world width, I imagine it'll get thicker.
Oh wow!
Right, so it's kind of a balance between the two, really, to get like the thickness you. It's like you set your base tip, like your root width, your tip width, and then you have your mid pixel width and mid world width to kind of balance out. And then as you kind of have to zoom in, zoom out, and get something that works. It might not be as necessary. If you're just doing like a still and you want to like show it off on like whatever, might not be as necessary. But when you have something moving and cameras flying around, you don't want that hair to get so small that it's just going to start flickering and like do all sorts of stuff. So this is just like kind of a way to keep it in check. I mean, that's probably a little overboard, but
No, it just looks like he got his hair done.
It reminds me of somebody from like Nickelodeon. They're like an old TV show.
yeah.
How taxing are these strands compared to using like larger alpha hair cards?
Taxing on the artist or taxing on the engine? So from like an authoring standpoint,
Yeah.
I would say, I mean, these are much more expensive there's so many more
Right.
polygons, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for an artist, I enjoy grooming hair more than I do hand placing cards.
Right.
And I don't think, I mean, at least for me, there's not a huge time difference. It depends on the quality of the cards you need and the budget, but you know, I feel with hair strands, you're able to get a lot more realism out of it. So you tend to be a little more critical of your work, right? Because you know what it can achieve. So it's taxing in that way. But as far as the grooming process, it's more enjoyable. With cards, you kind of know that, you know, it's probably not going to be 100% realistic. It's probably not even going to be close. It might look good artistically, but it's not going to be.
You're not going to
You're not going to put it in a film or anything like that. Yeah. So it's a little less taxing that way, but then hand placing cards is not an enjoyable process. So there's a trade-off for both. For most games, I would think that cards are still the way to go because there's so many less polygons.
Yeah.
But I do see a lot of potential with this strand hair moving forward. I'm seeing it used more and more, and it just, in my opinion, it looks a lot better. So,
Cool.
I mean, I hope to see it more
Right.
and more. Yeah.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're going to wrap up for today.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us.
No problem.
They've had lots of great questions, and I know this is such an incredible project. So the fact that we get a chance to talk about it and discuss it, and you guys can go grab this. Like, it's for, you know, it's available for free in our launcher. You can just dive into all these assets and see exactly how he was put together and built.
Yeah.
And make this hairdo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would suggest doing that. Like, download it, jump in, because there's so many, like, I mean, it was kind of a brief overview, but there's so many, like, different, like, nodes and things now you can dive in, look at, and adjust and see what they're actually doing.
Right.
And even, like, myself, like, I still do that.
Right.
So, like I said, I didn't do all of this. I'm not a one-man team. There's many talented people that work on it. And for me, I still like to look into some of the stuff that they did and be like, hey, this is how this is working. And that's cool, you know. And it's not just meant for, like, digital humans. You could use all this stuff on, I mean, it's kind of set a spot where, okay, this looks awesome. We know we can make this look good. What can we do with it now? Like,
Right.
and we've seen the creatures from, like, 3 lateral. You could do
These
something
are
like,
so good.
you could do something more stylized, but you can, knowing that you can reach this fidelity and then still use that for other characters,
Right.
like hand sculpted or whatever, it'd be.
Yeah.
And I should also say, you don't need scan data to do this. You can, or you don't need, like, access to, like, ICT. You can, you know, literally go online and download stuff from, like, Texture XYZ or, you know, Surface Mimic and build your own characters and use these shaders and things like that and get just as good results.
Yeah, we were just talking. We actually highlighted him last week, but it was Lucas Hotchka, I think was his name, and he even released another character, and he's getting them from 3D Scan Store.
Yep.
And just dropping them and
Yeah.
you know, messing with all these shaders, and it's stunning. what
Yeah,
people
no,
are
it's
able to
beautiful. It's
do,
awesome
so.
work. So
Yeah,
it makes us
that was
proud
incredible.
here.
Like, we were talking about it in the office, and just the lips and the way that everything just looked. It was just incredible. I was just talking to our producer to see if we could get that film loaded, but we have to. But yeah, I think just the idea of where we are with graphics fidelity and bringing human, just the idiosyncrasies of what makes human interaction and the body language and all of these different things where you can tell, hey, that's a human being.
yeah,
The bridge is getting more and more narrow,
Yeah.
and I think we're getting to the point where it's almost unnerving how realistic it can become.
yeah, and it was just, I mean, seeing Lucas's stuff, I was like, that is awesome because, like, I remember, like, I think the last digital human thing we did here was with Paragon with, like, I think it was Brian and Jordan. That was a while ago.
Yeah,
but
it
yeah.
was the like not twin blast.
And then just to see how far it's come here, and then to see, like, people like Lucas in the community that are, like, taking, like, what we did and like
Yeah.
tweaking stuff, and, like, how awesome it's getting is really exciting. Like, it's pretty cool
Definitely.
for sure.
Well, again, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
I tossed the survey link in the chat, so please let us know how we're doing on these streams and what kind of topics you'd like us to see seen covered in the future. What topics would you like to see covered in the future? Always check for your local UE4 meetup groups. So meetup.com/pro/Unreal Engine. There's so many great people working on projects, and it's always invaluable to be working with a team or getting feedback on your projects, or just getting help if you know they might know the answers if you're hitting a roadblock. So definitely go check those out. Submit your projects to the NVIDIA Edge program. might be able to send a graphics card your way, depending on how things shake out. So
Yeah.
totally worth it. And if you'd like to see yourself on the community spotlight at the beginning of this segment, we often dive into the forums to find those projects, so check the work in progress and release project sections there. And you want to talk about the countdown?
Yes. So this week we showed a new intro from actually he's in chat right now, Unreal Dean. They showed off Boxy, which is this kind of cool cardboard creature with an inferiority complex because there's all these robots. Like he's a cardboard and there's all these robots around him with super advanced technology, and it was an awesome video. And so we're always doing these 5-minute intros. So if you want to be shown in the beginning of the stream, we would encourage you to take like a 30-minute segment or an hour segment of your development, speed it up into a 5-minute segment, and send it over to us at community@unrealengine.com. And you might get featured in the rotation of our intros. Just make sure you include a copy of your logo as well as a description of your game. So thanks so much for joining us. This was awesome. This was incredible.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
No worries,
great
man.
work. We love seeing it.
Thanks.
it was awesome.
Thanks. Happy to
All
do
right.
it.
All right.
And we'll see you all next week. Thanks for coming by.
Take care, guys.
See ya.